It's not ideal. You're dealing with foundation, with moisture after it's exposed to foundation. But if you have big seepage issues, that might be your only choice. So the best way to deal with moisture or seepage issues is grading, no matter what. That's the number one thing.
Is what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Grading. Grading. So you can have this reinforced concrete foundation wall, and if I have a hill that's pitched to this wall without drainage tile around it, this wall will slowly buckle. You'll see a horizontal crack coming through. I mean, it could be almost a straight line coming through, and you'll look at it and you'll see it coming in the center. So grading is probably the biggest, most important thing that you can do proper grading for a foundation to maintain it. Proper grading, the sump doesn't get used as much, and you maintain the strength of the foundation wall because you don't build up something called hydrostatic pressure, which moisture will come in, and if you have any kind of expansive soils, it'll expand those soils and it'll create enough force on this wall to actually cause it to buckle. So, questions on the foundation?
Can you just run over cracks and stuff too?
Oh, yeah, we have over here we have a stair-step crack. Sometimes you'll see, like off of the beam, you'll see a little bit of a crack coming out. Some of those are shrinkage cracks. They're not necessarily anything big at the moment, but any kind of crack in the concrete could develop into a seepage issue. So we'll come in, maybe we'll see a little bit of, sometimes around window wells, around the beams, you'll see a small little crack that starts to develop. Usually it happens when the concrete is drying.
And those are okay?
Those are, I mean, you don't want to see any cracking. It's nice to see a nice solid wall, but it's called shrinkage cracking. So we basically mark it on there. Keep an eye on it. If it develops into something further, somebody can actually come in and they can drill through that and epoxy jet that crack, keep the seepage from coming through. Because once you get seepage coming through a crack, it'll slowly erode up the concrete, make it into a larger crack, and then you'll have a larger issue. But this horizontal crack is typically indicating hydrostatic pressure.
Those are bad, right? You see a
horizontal
crack, you're like...
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a foundation wall 12 feet high at the bottom of a hill, and they don't pitch, they don't create a swale in the front of the house, or they don't pitch around the house. You could literally see the wall coming in. Off the ends, the foundation wall is locked in by this wall. But in the middle, pressure is the greatest, it's actually buckling that in. So this part remains intact up to probably maybe 8 feet off the wall because it's braced by this wall. It's not going anywhere. But in the center, even with reinforcing, there's enough pressure in there.
Now, I heard that like level cracks, if there's not too much of a difference between the wall, between the two ends of the crack, two sides of the crack, is considered to be okay, or keep an eye on it. But if it has any sort of like step off from where the crack is, that's where you want to be more concerned.
Yeah, I mean, we can have you can have a crack running down through here, and somebody can actually come in and epoxy jet it. As long as you don't have a shifting.
Shifting equals bad.
Then you're then you're getting into outside forces that are creating pressure on the wall, and that can lead to a structural issue. So if you have, concrete, you're going to have a little shrinkage crack. It can develop into a larger crack over time. As long as that crack is not shifting, you don't have. If it's shifting, you either don't have enough rebar reinforcement in there, or there's a bit of hydrostatic pressure building up behind that area.
When you do your inspections in areas where the basement is required to be insulated, do you remove the insulation to check the walls, or?
No. One thing that we typically would do when you walk the perimeter of a house, you're supposed to have at least 6 inches of concrete foundation above the soils. You're supposed to. It doesn't mean you have it, but a lot of times you'll walk through the exterior of the house and you'll see the foundation. And a crack can extend up through that area. And sometimes those shift cracks are visible from the outside. So that's one thing that we can do. The other part is we look for any signs of seepage on the interior. And that could be, if you have a thermal camera, you can do thermal imaging. Another is spot testing with a moisture meter. But in terms of removing insulation or wallboard, unless there's an access panel, you get into certain limitations that we have on an inspection. So as inspectors, we'll go as far as we can without damaging anything, really. If there's an access panel with a couple of screws, I'll take the access panel off and I'll look in behind it. We're supposed to do that.
Any other questions? Well, thank you.
Thanks for guiding me, everyone.
All right, that concludes our presentation.